What's going on, guys? It's Danny from Fantasy Stock Exchange here, and today I'll be going through my top Week 5 waivers. 10 players total that you can go out, pick up, and help boost your squad going into Week 5 of fantasy football. Whether you're 4-0, 3-1, 2-2, 1-3, or even 0-4, these are guys that can help bolster those fantasy football squads. Again, 5 main total players and 5 honorable mentions that can help you get the dub in Week 5. But before we get into the video, as always, if you're watching and you enjoy, make sure you leave a like down below. Comment your favorite waiver claim of the week and subscribe to the channel. About 15,000 subscribers that we passed a couple of weeks ago. Appreciate you guys for supporting us on our road to 20,000. But either way, before we get into that list, as always, let's hit the intro. All right, before I get into the main 5 waivers of the week, I just want to go over some guys that are probably rostered in your leagues, but just check to make sure. First one being Nyheim Hines, running back of the Indianapolis Colts. Recent news that Jonathan Taylor did suffer an ankle sprain this past week. More information will be coming out this week, but Nyheim Hines and someone to monitor. He is probably rostered in your league, but if he isn't, he could potentially see some more rushing work, obviously with Jonathan Taylor being banged up. Melvin Gordon, running back of the Denver Broncos. He's surely owned in your league, but if he's not, obviously the recent news, Javonte Williams tearing his ACL and LCL out for the rest of the season. With Melvin Gordon, you may potentially be getting a main, 18 opportunity per game back for Denver with Javonte Williams on the mend. Other running back, Raheem Mostert, running back from Miami, looks to be the clear top option in Mike McDaniel's offense, an offense that has proved capable of putting up points in any given week. Raheem Mostert looks good. He's getting the majority of the opportunities. Yes, Chase Edmonds has actually scored the touchdowns, but we're looking for that opportunity share. We're looking for when they're actually being used, and Raheem Mostert's usage has actually been better than that of Chase Edmonds. A few other names, Brian Robinson, running back of the Washington Commanders, coming back from a gunshot wound that he suffered in the preseason. Antonio Gibson has really been the most trustworthy back thus far for Washington, and Brian Robinson actually flat out beat him out for that number 1 job in the preseason. So when he returns, even if he doesn't become that full acclimated starter, should easily be able to command some work over from Antonio Gibson. Alexander Mattison, running back of the Minnesota Vikings, really someone to monitor because if he's available, first of all, he shouldn't be. He's one of the highest priority handcuffs in all of fantasy football. But if he is available, Dalvin Cook battling that shoulder injury, wearing that harness, one bad hit to Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison is a blow all your fab type of player. So I'd rather just stash him now and make sure I can save my fab while I can. Final mention in a wide receiver with Romeo Doubs. He's looked good these past couple of weeks, looks to be gaining the trust of Aaron Rodgers. And if he keeps up what he's been doing in these past couple of weeks, he could prove to be a long-term top 40-ish level receiver flex play for the foreseeable future, especially being that trusted weapon for Aaron Rodgers. But now we go to guys that you should be watching out for on Monday Night Football. Now let's get on to the top 5 waivers, guys that are absolutely relevant and guys that you should be spending your fab on going into this week. Number 1, another rookie receiver. It's been the theme of the show pretty much so far this year, but George Pickens, wide receiver of the Pittsburgh Steelers. We saw this past week that his routes actually led to targets. The past couple weeks, the first couple weeks of his career, he was basically running routes, but he was more so doing wind sprints out there. He wasn't really commanding targets. He wasn't really getting, proper usage. He was more so just running nines. He was running posts and he was running curls. And that's the extent of his route tree. But we saw this past week that his actual role was developed on that Steelers offense. 8 targets on his 26 routes run, which would equal a 30.7 target rate or targets per route run rate and a 29.6% target share in week 4. Young rookie wide receiver showing the ability to command targets early is exactly what we look for from a fantasy football perspective. And yeah, the production finally met the usage. He was running a lot of routes, but his production actually met that cause. And with George Pickens, the reason why we want to spend up, the reason why we want to bid up on these young ascending receivers is they have the potential to win leagues. I mean, we talk about guys like Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Chris Olave, etc. all the time, but if George Pickens can join that elite group of young receivers, we should be talking about a potential wide receiver 3 for the rest of the year with more upside to even get into that wide receiver 2 range. This rookie receiver class, as I kind of mentioned, has been great thus far, but I do expect Pickens to join them. And the Steelers recently announced a change at quarterback to Kenny Pickett for the rest of the season. I believe that should open up more opportunities to look down the field for Pickens compared to the offense that they were running with Trubisky at the helm. Kenny Pickett, maybe some more deep shots, maybe some more outside the numbers type of shots. With George Pickens, who's been a physically dominating receiver thus far. In terms of fab, I'm fine with bidding up to 30 to 50%. I think it could be a long-term wide receiver 3-4 type on your guys' rosters. Next player is going to be another receiver, Michael Gallup from my beloved Dallas Cowboys. You guys see all the jerseys hanging behind me. 41% rostered according to Yahoo Fantasy, and he finally made his return from last season's late ACL tear to the tune of an 83% route participation and putting up a 2 for 24 and 1 touchdown line on the 3 targets that he was able to command this past week. Again, the target share is not great right now, but we expect that as he recovers from that ACL, as he gets reacclimated to this game, he'll command more volume in the long term. But despite the low volume, he was still very influential in the targets he did get against Washington. He added a vertical element to the Cowboys offense, and he actually drew a penalty down the field. So I expect him to be that near every down X receiver for the Cowboys, and he could be a flex play for the time being. I do think once Dak Prescott comes back, once those deep shots start coming back with Dak at the helm, he has a wide receiver 2 ceiling in fantasy. So I think you can probably get him cheap right now. I'd be willing to spend up to 20% of my fab, but maybe you can get him cheaper than that because he hasn't exactly had a, elite box score game just yet, but expect those box score games to come, especially when Dak Prescott, number 4, returns to this Cowboys offense. Number 3 waiver pickup of the week is going to be Tyler Allgeier, running back of the Atlanta Falcons, rostered in 18% of Yahoo Fantasy leagues, and he saw a semi-breakout in this week's game. He turned 11 touches into 104 yards from scrimmage, and he started to look like he was finally finding his groove in this Falcons backfield. Obviously, the big news of this backfield and why he's on this list is that Cordero Patterson was placed on IR following this game, and that opens up an opportunity for Allgeier to become that main back for Atlanta. He did split snaps in this game with Avery Williams and Caleb Huntley, but he saw 6 of the 8 third down snaps and actually handled a 20 to 15 snap advantage over the other 2 backs in this game. I expect the rookie to handle the majority of the lead back duties, including third down situations, which gives him a top 30 level running back baseline, with obviously potential for higher upside if he can phase them out of the rotation with good play on his own right. I think he's the most talented running back of this backfield, and if he shows that he's capable of handing that big bell cow role, I think he's got a top 20 level ceiling in fantasy football. He's a low risk, high upside play, in my opinion, when it comes to Tyler Allgeier. I think 20% of your fab should be able to scoop him up this week, especially if you lost Javonte Williams, especially if you might potentially lose Jonathan Taylor. I think Tyler Allgeier should be your top target on waivers this week. Number 4 waiver claim of the week is going to be Rachaad White, running back of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 27% rostered in Yahoo Fantasy leagues. And Rachaad White did see more work than he has in each of his last 3 games. We saw this past week, he garnered 25 out of the 64 total backfield snaps, including all 4 goal line snaps for Tampa Bay going up against that Chiefs defense. I expect this, of course, to be Leonard Fournette's backfield moving forward, but I think with Rachaad White, you could very much see a Tony Pollard-like situation where Rachaad White will get worked in, and obviously he holds that elite upside in this backfield with anything were to happen to Uncle Lenny. I think he's one of the best leverage handcuffs in all of fantasy football. He's a must-add and especially a stash running back. Think of him in the limelight, again, as I mentioned, Tony Pollard guys, Melvin Gordon, Alexander Madison. That level of upside is represented where, again, if Leonard Fournette misses any time on this Tampa Bay offense, we know the Tampa Bay offense can be able to put up points. And Rachaad White has at least shown that he has 3 down capabilities to potentially be a top 5 to 10 back in that instance. So in terms of fab, I think you should be able to get him for about 10 to 20% of your fab. And I think he'd be well worth that stash. Number 5 is going to be Kenneth Walker, running back of the Seattle Seahawks, rostered in 47% of Yahoo Fantasy leagues. And this is big news because Travis Homer was placed on IR this past week. We saw Seattle utilizing a 2-back system between Rashad Penny and Kenneth Walker. You guys can see the tweet on the screen, but we saw the snaps distributed as follows. Rashad Penny, 45 snaps with 15 routes run. Kenneth Walker with 24 snaps, 8 routes run, while DJ Dallas only garnered 3 snaps with 2 total routes run. So it's clear that Seattle's finally gearing towards putting their 2 best backs in the situations to get the most volume on this team. And we saw Rashad Penny had a huge game going up against that Detroit Lions front, but Rashad Penny has been a very volatile player on a week-to-week basis in terms of his health, in terms of his play. So if anything were to happen where if Penny starts playing bad or if Penny gets hurt yet again, Kenneth Walker has the upside to potentially be a top 15 level running back in fantasy football in that instance. So in terms of fab, I mean, I'd be able to get him cheap now, 10% seems about reasonable for Kenneth Walker in terms of now. But again, if anything were to happen to Rashad Penny, this becomes an all you have left fab bid, like 50 plus, 60 plus percent. That would be the case if Penny were to miss time, but get him cheap now, stash him on your bench so you don't have to pay all that fab going forward. Now, finally, we go over some honorable mentions on this list, guys that didn't quite make the top 5 cut, but are definitely worth monitoring and are definitely worth scooping for a cheaper fab bid. Kadarius Toney, wide receiver of the New York Giants. I think he's worth an upside stash. Obviously, the talent is still there, and with Giants receivers troubles, maybe he finally gets the opportunity he has deserved given his talent level. Next one's going to be Mike Boone, running back of the Denver Broncos. I mentioned the case for Melvin Gordon in the prelude, but with Mike Boone, he did actually see more work this past week when Javonte got hurt than Melvin Gordon. I'm still kind of worried, though, that was more so a knee-jerk reaction by the coaches and that Melvin Gordon will eventually lead the majority of the snaps going forward. So yes, he got more work. Yes, there's an opportunity where potentially he works ahead of Melvin Gordon, but realistically, I do think that Melvin Gordon's going to be the mainstay for this backfield from the coaching staff perspective. Next one is going to be Zay Jones, wide receiver at the Jacksonville Jaguars. He showed that when he's been healthy, he's operated as that Jags wide receiver too, prior to missing this past week with injury. Maybe somebody in your league got frustrated, dropped him because he missed his past game. I'd scoop him up for the cheap, and maybe you can view him as a wide receiver 5-6 type in your lineups. Next one's going to be Sky Moore, wide receiver at the Kansas City Chiefs. He saw snaps, routes, and targets all go up this past week against Tampa Bay. And if his play time actually keeps going up and he keeps showing the ability to command targets, I think he could be the top overall waiver wire ad this time, maybe next week, the week after, whenever the case is, when this opportunity arises. Sky Moore has the talent and the player archetype to be able to be worth basically all your fab if he shows out in the next couple of weeks. So get him for cheap now, $5, and I think that will pay off for you in the long run. Next one's going to be Alec Pierce, wide receiver of the Indianapolis Colts. He's looked like that strong, deep threat and number 2 option in this Colts offense whenever he's been healthy, and he's worth monitoring. Obviously, if Michael Pittman were to miss any time, or if the Colts offense shows the ability to support 2 weapons in this offense, I think Alec Pierce would be that next guy after Michael Pittman in terms of the hierarchy of targets on this team. Either way, if you guys have made it to the end of the video and you enjoyed, make sure you leave a like down below. Again, comment your favorite waiver wire pickup of the week and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get this video to about 150 likes. If you guys are watching and you enjoyed, hit that thumbs up. Helps us a lot in the YouTube algorithm, but stay tuned for later today. I'm going to be dropping my top streamers as well. So got your waivers, streamers later. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Take care.
Wire me the money.